Hey everyone, this is Heidi St. John. Welcome to Off the Bench with Heidi St. John. You are in for a treat today because my friend, the founder of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association and Patrick Henry College, and the former general counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom, this guy is a giant in the homeschool movement, in the freedom movement, in the fight to maintain freedom in the United States. He's also the author of a brand new course on American civics, which you guys have been hearing me talk about, joins me today. Mike Farris and I are going to discuss the state of homeschooling, kind of where we go from here in the country and what you can do to make sure that freedom is secure for the rising generation. Stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. Hey, Mike Farris, welcome to the show.
Heidi, it is always a pleasure to be with you, especially when I get to see you in person, but this is pretty good.
This is pretty good. It's not bad, considering you're on one coast and I'm on the other. Not too bad.
That's right.
I want to jump right into this because you and I, we've had the opportunity to talk before about homeschooling and kind of where we've come from and where we're going. As the founder of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, nobody understands the legalities behind homeschooling and how it became legal more than you do. But people are getting worried now because homeschooling has got the attention of the mainstream media. It's not this, fringe movement anymore. And there are a lot of people that have been homeschooling for a long time. Now they see the rise of charter schools. We're watching funding, homeschoolers asking for funding from the federal government and through taxes and things like that. I'm curious now, I got a couple of questions for you, but the first thing is, where do you see us headed in terms of continuing to have homeschooling be legal in all 50 states?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I'm glad that people are concerned about this because we never protect liberty with a lackadaisical attitude. I don't think people should worry because worry is a sin. But I think that people should be alert and concerned and looking ahead, looking kind of around the curve to see what's coming next. Because stuff is coming. There will be attacks made, and we need to respond in faith and encourage and forcefully, but worry's not on the table for believers. So that's it's close to what's the right reaction, but not exactly.
We've said over here, especially in COVID, like preparing is good, panic is sin. God doesn't want us to be living in this perpetual state of reactiveness and panic.
Exactly. So, in fact, I made a speech on this phase of homeschool freedom. It's been at least 10 years ago. It may be more like closer to 20. And I called it the third wave of homeschool freedom. And the first wave was you can't do this because nobody can do this, and the second wave was what about socialization, and people can't do. And when both those things went away and people realized we can do it academically and socialization, it works just fine. Thank you very much. The third wave is you shouldn't be able to do this because you're indoctrinating your children in a worldview that is contrary to the dominant worldview that has seized control of many institutions, including especially both academic institutions of the collegiate and university level, but also K through 12 for the most part. There are rare exceptions, but it's fair to say that the general rule is the same progressive, anti-liberty, anti-God movement has seized control of the vast majority of public schools and the enforcement institutions of public education as well. So, and they openly say that the reason that they want to curtail homeschool freedoms is because of our philosophy. They don't want Christian kids being taught a faithful rendition of biblical morality, biblical worldview. They hate the Constitution, as evidenced by the 1619 Project. They hate the Declaration of Independence. They hate America, as America was founded. They hate God, and they want to rip all those things down. And they don't like us in particular because we honor all those things. We honor the Word of God. We honor the founding principles of our country. We recognize that it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we think the principles were the right principles. The Declaration of Independence got it right when we said we're endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we achieve these things by self-government, by equality, not equity, and by a faithful adherence to the idea that rights are created by God. So you blend those things together, and you get America. And they don't like any of that, any component of that. And so homeschoolers have gotten in their crosshairs. But the one thing that gets people worried is that, well, there's so many of us now that that's an extra cause for concern. No. Just the opposite is true. They had these same concerns when the entire homeschooling movement could meet in my family's 15-passenger van. And you know, I heard all these things starting in '83. So,
Yep.
you know, and so this, the fact that there are probably there is probably 8% of the school age population that's being homeschooled today. That's pretty close to accurate, you know, plus or minus a, you know, percent and a half, something like that.
Yeah.
That's close to the right number. It got as high as 10, and it has backed off because schools opened back up after COVID. But
Although pretty amazing, I am amazed at the matriculation rate. I mean, we thought we're going to lose, you know, the schools are going to open up and all these kids are going to go back to the schools, but that's not happening. I mean, it's certainly not happening here in my neck of the woods.
No, homeschooling essentially doubled overnight, went from 5% to 10%. And we've kept the majority of that gain, and it's still growing. It's growing because the schools have gone crazy woke. And parents don't like that. They actually want their kids to learn academics.
Reading, writing, arithmetic. So odd.
And so they don't want their kids indoctrinated in wokeism, or frankly, they don't want the public schools to indoctrinate them in anything. And so all that to say, the extra numbers are good for us because ultimately, at the end of the day, the way American politics works is if a majority of the people think that you should have the right to do so, that's, from a human political perspective, that's the best situation you can be in. Who cares what the powerful elites think? If the vast majority of Americans think that homeschooling is a good thing, and guess what? The vast majority of Americans who have school-age children identify with us because even if they were just sitting in their home watching a public school classroom on their computer, they think of themselves as having somewhat participated in homeschooling. They identify with us right now. And the other thing that American homeschooling did for the general population is to say, you don't have to freak out that your kids are going to, you know, curl up and die because we know all these homeschoolers have been pretty successful. And so, so that gave Americans a great affinity for homeschooling. So for the next 15, 20 years, we've got a lot of political capital in the general public. I wouldn't say, you know, not the public school elites, not the, you know, the establishment media, nothing like that. But with just mom and dad, your people, your neighbors, regular people, we have got a lot of political capital, and that means a lot, and it is worth a lot. And so, but none of that, none of the capital, none of our successes is a justification for sitting on the sidelines and waiting around for this to happen to us. We have to be alert. We have to fight every battle that comes to our way. Somebody introduces a bill to study the problems of homeschooling. We kill the study bill. We don't let them, you know, because study bills are just a way to slow walk bad stuff. And so you know, we fight at every turn. We don't let anything go unchallenged. And so our attitude is alert, diligent, and you know, as forceful as we can do with grace. I don't think we engage in ad hominem personal attacks, but there's nothing wrong with saying you're wrong. you know,
Forcefully.
Yeah, forcefully. Yeah,
Yeah,
you just don't have to add the nasty words about the person. Just your ideas are wrong. Your proposal is wrong. We will not accept your idea. We will not accept your proposals.
So in other words, you don't want us to say you're stupid.
Prefer not. No. Yeah.
Yeah. You want us to say, you're trying to say, hey, we attack the idea, not the person. How about we bring civility back to the political sphere in this country? That's something that's been missing for a long time.
Yeah,
as well.
and unfortunately, I get it. Quite humanly speaking,
Sure.
People resort to that because we get called names regularly. Okay, and there's just no fruit in it for a believer. It's not successful. It doesn't convince anybody of anything. Arguments may convince some people, but the lack of civility only convinces people that you are, we feed into their stereotypes of us.
Well, then it just says we are who they say we are.
Yeah, exactly.
When we begin to do that, we're actually helping the other side.
Yeah.
I've got a question. I talk regularly here at the show about the bills that are coming down through lots of different state legislatures now, the backpack bills, right? The money follows the child and education savings accounts and all those kinds of things. How do you see those issues as it relates to homeschool freedom?
That's pretty complicated. The historical patterns are that done wrong, with the phrases with shekels come shackles, and there's truth to that, but it's not. I'm not maybe as pure as some people on this. For example, I would think that a way to just deduct from my own tax returns the ability, I favor tax deduction or tax credits. So,
which is different.
Yeah, I don't want the government giving me money, but I don't mind a tax law that lets me keep some of my own money.
There you go.
And so that's, and I think that most people would be fine with that. Most homeschoolers who are looking for something would be fine with that. And so that would be the approach that I would take. And on the one hand, I'm glad that we're breaking up the public school monopoly in any way, shape, or form that it's happening, but I would never participate in that. And so, I think homeschoolers would be wise to not participate in any form of tax funding. But on the other hand,
for example, So here in Washington State, and it's different, it has different names in different parts of the state, but most people understand the name parent partnering programs. These are basically public school programs that market themselves to the homeschool community, and they're funded by the federal government. Once you enroll in these programs, you call yourself a homeschooler, but the state of Washington does not call you a homeschooler. All of your books are free in air quotes, right? That's the kind of thing that you're like, hey, let's be careful because that's what we want to stay away from.
Well, I had a lady come up to me many years ago now. She was from the city of South San Francisco, which is between the main city of San Francisco and the airport. And so South San Francisco had a program like this, and she participated in it. And she got a letter from the school district demanding their money back because she used the money from the government to buy Christian curriculum.
Right.
And they said, no, you're a public school program. You can't spend the money on religious education.
That's right.
And so schools will take that position. Now the Supreme Court has made that less clear than it was. Some of the cases that have been recently argued make it arguable that public school programs can clearly include, in fact, maybe even must include religious programs. If they offer school choice to private secular schools, they cannot deny religious schools to participate in the same programs. That's the net of what they don't have to offer these programs, these private school programs. But if they offer any, they can't exclude religious schools. That's the net of the U.S. Supreme Court these days. But nonetheless, whatever the rules are in your state concerning secular, schools and so on, you're going to run into, these kind of challenges and these kinds of efforts. And so I would just encourage people, be really, really cautious. I would, it's better that than, if you're in a desperate situation and, it's either this or going to the regular public school, I'd take my chances, I guess. But
we don't want the mainstream of homeschooling to follow. We want this to be the exception rather than the rule.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's switch gears for just a minute, because I've been promoting your constitutional course, your civics course here for a couple of months with I hope some good success, because we're getting great feedback here at the show.
Good.
It wasn't enough for you. You haven't apparently had your Napoleon moment yet. You haven't surveyed the territory and thought, my work here is done. And so it's not enough to argue before the Supreme Court and start Patrick Henry College and the NHSLDA and work for the Alliance Defending Freedom and have 10 kids. That wasn't enough. Now you've written a course on American civics. A couple of questions right out of the gate. Why now? I mean, why do you think it's so important that we study civics? I mean, to motivate you, you've already done so much with your life and your career, obviously, for freedom, because that's when I think of protecting American liberty, I always think of Mike Farris. I told you I'm working hard to get your name up there on Mount Rushmore. But before that happens, you jumped into this with both feet, wrote an extraordinary course on the Constitution and civic engagement. What motivated you to do that?
I want to win for the next generation. If we don't have people who believe in the principles of freedom, we're not going to have freedom for very long.
That's right.
And so homeschooling gives you the opportunity to create freedom-loving kids, God-loving kids, but it doesn't guarantee it. If you don't ever teach them, from the Bible, just because there's one sitting on your bedside table, or there's one sitting on the kitchen table, or someplace else in the house, it doesn't mean that the Bible is going to get inside the head and hearts of your kids. You got to teach it. And you are doing something remarkably important for freedom by having you provide your kids' education rather than the government. Because when people think the government's providing the education for their kids, they think that the purpose of government is to provide for my needs. If you think that, you're a socialist, or at least you're bent towards socialism. But if the family is God's instrument in providing for your needs, then you're bent toward freedom. But you still got to teach it. You still got to go out of your way to make sure that your kids learn about how government works, about how the Constitution is supposed to work, and how it can work, and how to be a good voter. Everybody used to understand that teaching civics was a good idea. It can be pretty boring, but unfortunately, if you have a dry presentation,
I was going to say I feel like it's anything but boring.
Well,
it depends on who's teaching it.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's my point. Is that meaning, for example, the most boring thing in every civics program is how a bill becomes law, and I actually think it's one of my favorite episodes that I recorded, because what I do is I tell a story of how a real bill became law, and that is the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and I was involved in that from day one. I'm the guy who named it. And I explained how that happened, because basically nobody else had another idea. That's all. So I my light's falling down here. So let's fix the falling light. Okay. But by telling stories and doing it in a more interesting fashion, you get the content in a way that when it's more interesting to begin with, you're more likely to remember it. And so,
well, that's what Jesus did, right?
Exactly.
I mean, he told parables. Yeah, he taught that way.
So everything I do in the course, the academic, the nuts and bolts part of stuff, you have to do that. But when you weave the academics in with illustrative stories, it's just better all around.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and you're a masterful storyteller, and honestly, civics should not be boring because we need the rising generation to engage again in the political discussion, to be motivated to want to vote again. And we know, because we've watched it happen now for the last 3 years, it doesn't take much. I'm sure you're watching what's happening in New Mexico right now. Governor Grisham in New Mexico trying to suspend the Second Amendment for the citizens of Albuquerque. How did she do that? Well, she used an emergency. She called it a public health emergency. And we're going to see this happen, I think, more and more. And unless the citizens understand that this isn't the way our government works, she could potentially get away with it.
Indeed, what she's doing is an act of dictatorship. But in the civics courses on the power of the executive, which includes presidents and governors, basically, we cover this. Is that, can they just be a law unto themselves? And
executive order, right? Isn't that what she did? She issued an executive order. We hear about these all the time. How constitutional is an executive order?
If it's applied to private people and private property, never constitutional. Why? Article 1, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution, and every state has a similar provision in their state constitution, is all laws have to be passed by Congress or at the state level by the state legislature. The governor can't make up laws. And when she decides that people in Albuquerque can't carry guns, she's making up a law. That's an act of dictatorship. When one person makes a law, you call that a dictator. And I don't care if they're Republican presidents or Democrat presidents, all of them for a long time have been doing this. And, I don't want my favorite president to be doing this any more than I want the person I did everything I could to defeat at the ballot. We should do it right. We should, whatever laws we should have, we should pass them by the legislative branch. Now, I do think it's okay for one president to undo the executive orders of the past. And so an executive order that does nothing other than reverse a prior executive order, I favor those. But any executive order from any party that puts a burden on private people or private property to obey a new law, I think is unconstitutional. Because a Republican form of government means we elect legislatures to make laws. Why? Because the founders understood that men are sinful, and this is an outgrowth of the Christian worldview. When men are sinners, you don't want a tiny group of sinners making the laws for all of us. Our best shot for having freedom is if we spread that decision making among as large a group of sinners as possible, because sinners start checking each other, and there's checks and balances in that. And so the best way to have, all government's not very fun, but the best shot we have is to spread power in a lot of different ways, a lot of different levels, and lawmaking is reserved for the biggest group around. At the federal level, 535 people. At the state level, hundreds, usually a couple hundred people. So that's the short reason for it. And she shouldn't be able to do that any more than people should be able to decide what businesses are essential or not essential. That was an act of dictatorship as well.
Yeah. We really saw it up close and personal here in Washington State. It was really something. I told you last time I saw you, I kind of feel like I have PTSD from the whole thing, right? Because you just can't believe that this is happening in the United States of America. But this is decades now of American citizens not understanding their basic constitutional rights and the freedoms that have been given to us by our founding fathers. Really quickly, I want to talk about your course because I want people to get it. It is, how many weeks is it, and did you ever come up with the little question and answer, the discussion guide?
Oh yeah,
I can't remember.
Yes, the discussion guides are done.
Good. I want adults to do it. I mean, obviously, I'm promoting this for for my audience, of which there are tens of thousands of people listening who have high school students and that kind of thing, which obviously we clearly need this, but we're going to start showing it here at the Homeschool Resource Center, and I want adults to engage.
Well, we have two packages for it. One is the full high school curriculum with hundreds of pages of resources and reading materials and quizzes and essay prompts and tests. The program is 30 weeks long. There are 25 videos. There are 5 weeks are planned for tests and for field trips. And we give field trip ideas on how to do a civics-based field trip. And so there's choices that people can engage in, but we encourage that for about 3 of those weeks. So a couple weeks for tests, 3 weeks for field trips, 25 video lessons, and hundreds of.
So they get a full high school. I mean, you're getting full high school.
You're getting
for
a
this.
full year high school curriculum. But if you just want to watch the 25 videos, you can do that, and that's what we aim at the general population. And it could be a men's group at a church or a women's group at a church, or in my prior video course I did on constitutional literacy. People did it for adult Sunday school class, and tea party food, and other things of that nature. So then there's just thousands and thousands of people just watch it themselves, and so that's very doable. The lessons are 20-25 minutes per unit.
So honestly, I mean, it's 30, 25 videos, but you could do 2 videos in a night. I mean, if you had, that's kind of what we were planning on doing here. If you had a group of people and they said, hey, we can do this for 15 weeks, you could easily condense it into a 3-month constitutional study. Or if you wanted to do it in Saturdays and do 3 or 4 videos at a time, there's lots of different ways that people can get it done.
Exactly. And, the pricing is a lot better. It's, I think it's $95. It might be $99. So don't kill me if I'm $4. But for the shorter, for just the videos, and it's $200 and something. So just go to the website, in your website, and see. People should buy it through you, because then you get credit, and we want you to get credit for it. And
yes, well, and we have a promo code, also a discount code, and I'll talk about that in the outro today. We've had a lot of great success promoting that here, and in my heart, I mean, this, I just finished a 2-year run for the U.S. House of Representatives. This is what the Founding Fathers had in mind for ordinary people like Heidi St. John, right? I mean, we are supposed to be participating in our system of government, not just being bystanders.
That's exactly right. And we don't all have to run for Congress. I've never run for Congress myself. I ran for lieutenant governor.
I don't recommend it.
I ran for lieutenant governor, which is
that's pretty remarkable.
That was statewide, especially a state the size of. I mean, Virginia and Washington are pretty similar in size. So Virginia's 11 congressional districts. Washington's 9, right? 9,
I believe.
Yeah. And so they're pretty good sized states, and so both population wise and geography. So it's a task, but the vast majority of Americans are not called to do what you and I've done, run for office. But everybody is called to be a good citizen, because the book of James says, for him who knows to do right and doeth it not, to him is sin. And we know that it's right that we try to vote in a way that is consistent with Proverbs 3:6, which says, in all your ways acknowledge God, and he will direct your paths. In all your ways includes your ways as a citizen. And so we're to vote consistently what we understand from the Word of God. Simple as that. And sitting on the sidelines and doing nothing is not an option for people who want to be obedient to the Word of God. And so you don't have to be, devoting hours and hours and hours of this. Some people are called to do that, and we should support such people. All of us are called to do a little bit, and everybody is called to vote in accordance to the understanding of the life and the world that they live in from the Word of God, biblical worldview. We should be using a biblical worldview, which one of the reasons it's so nice to know the constitutional worldview is that the Constitution was written in a season where America was dominated by a biblical worldview. So a constitutional worldview is not a biblical worldview in and of itself, but it is consonant with the worldview, the biblical worldview, because it was written by people who had one. They weren't all born again, but a biblical worldview was dominant, which is why we have separation of powers and limited government and God-given freedoms. All those principles come from the Word of God.
It's an incredible. We're living in some incredible times.
Indeed.
I mean, it's an incredible time to be a Christian. It's an incredible time to be an American as we're watching what's happening. But I, like you, have hope still for this country. I think there are a lot of people who feel this is pointless. Why are we even trying? I mean, we're watching Joe Biden stumble across the world stage. This guy who cannot string two coherent sentences together, and people are like, "What's happening to our country?" But I think it's more reason to get involved. I don't think this is a reason for us to sort of give up and throw our hands in the air and say, it's outside of our jurisdiction. We can't change it anyway. We can change it. We have the opportunity to change it because our founding fathers made a mechanism for us to get involved. Where can people find your civics course?
They can find it from you.
They can find it from me.
Yes.
So I'm gonna link back to it. It's actually Lumen.
Yes.
LUMINN.com, and you guys are going to want to use the promo code Heidi. Don't spell it wrong, spell it right, or you won't get the credit. HEIDI. Use that promo code when you guys check out, and I know it's going to be a blessing. Mike Farris, you're going to come back in just a couple of minutes and join me for happy hour, but for regular subscribers here, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show. You are, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, you are a national treasure, and I consider it a great honor to know you and to have you be able to come on here and talk to my listeners about the United States and why it's so important that they remain involved. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Well, as you guys can see, we had the opportunity today, you and me, to be part of listening to, I believe, one of the great American voices in defense of freedom, obviously a champion for the homeschool movement. I hope you guys have been encouraged by that. And I want to encourage you, check out Mike Farris's American Civics course. I would encourage you, you can watch it in your church. You could watch it in a Bible study that's done at home. You could absolutely host a homeschool event and host it there. You heard me talk to him about a couple different ways that I think it's possible to teach it. But it's so important, you guys, that we understand our system of government and how it works. Mike Farris is a very gifted teacher, and I think that you will love it. So check it out at lumen.com, LUMINN, and use the promo code Heidi. Don't forget to use that promo code for a discount. And I can't wait to hear your reviews. And please send them to me, HeidiSt.John.com/Mailbox Monday. If you are subscribed to Happy Hour, stick around because Mike Farris and I are going to talk a little bit about his personal life and what it was like to raise 10 children. How did he get involved in the homeschooling in the first place? Because his dad was actually a public school teacher and also a public school principal. So Mike has a really interesting story. We're going to talk about that, the personal side of Mike Farris at Happy Hour today. So I hope you guys will stick around for that. Everybody else, thank you so much for listening, for leaving reviews. Love your people well today. Get off the bench, get onto the battlefield, and I'll see you back here again at the intersection of faith and culture.